warming up now for the Sports Sedan Championship Round 4, sponsored by Toyota Dealers of South Australia, and this is a clash to which everyone is looking forward, barring one person. That's the man in the white car behind the red Chevy Monza, into which has been put Peter Brock. And Peter Brock this weekend has been proving two things. One, just how good that Chevy Monza is, a beautifully balanced car with enormous mid-range torque, but also how well he can pilot it. He did yesterday a 51.1 second lap, which was 2.9 seconds under the lap record held by the car's owner, Bob Jane, before the car underwent a 6-8 month rebuild up until this meeting. But he was 1.6 seconds faster than the next car there, Alan Jones, in car number 27, the twin-turbo Porsche 935. He was 1.2 seconds faster than his teammate Colin Bond, who was also under the lap record. So three cars, those three front-running cars, were all under the existing lap record in practices yesterday. And at the end of the straight, that Monza and that Porsche, the lead Porsche there from the Alan Hamilton Porsche Cars Australia team, hitting close to 300 kilometres per hour. In behind, Rusty French's black car, a similar 935 to the one that Jones is driving, was the RSR, normally aspirated Porsche, non-turbo, of Peter Fitzgerald. Rusty French there, emphasising the difference in drivers. Alan Jones, a 52.7, Rusty French, a 56.6. But Peter Brock, a 170 kilometre an hour average in a car that Alan Jones hastens to point out is, in certain parts of the circuit, a much better motor car than the Porsche. But Peter Brock, too, making magnificent use of it. He's surprised that he did some practice starts early this morning, that he's going to need about 6,500 revs, despite it having a 6-litre motor, to get it off the line. But he said, of course, it's got a pretty tall first gear. And here he's lining up to do a practice start. That first gear will run Peter Brock to just over 150 kilometres an hour. It's a 95 mile an hour first gear in the Monza.
Takes about 4 seconds to get there before he has to change his gear.
So, irrespective of whether Jones, 1.6 seconds in arrears in practices, can get up there and mix it with Brock, and just talking to him a few minutes ago, he thinks not, but then he'll fire himself up when the flag drops. His teammate is Colin Bond there in 28. That was the car that Jones was originally to drive. It is beautifully suited to some of the long, sustained corners of this circuit. That's the brute, the Porsche 935, over which this morning the Edmondson team lodged protests with CAMS only an hour or so ago. Those protests are being heard and will be deliberated on later, and the car is a starter. And that's the car, 600-odd horsepower from a 6-litre V8 engine. 1 minute to go, 60 seconds to watching two of the best drivers in Australia, one international, one local, and the two fastest and most powerful cars on Adelaide International Raceway. Over 25 laps, 2.41 kilometres a lap. That's 60 1/4 the race distance. There are 17 cars lined up. It's round 4. Jones has a perfect score, 3 wins, 27 points. And there's the grid. 56.6 Rusty French. Behind French is Peter Fitzgerald in that white Porsche. Mick Monterosso in the Escort. But the cars we're interested in, you can see there, the Edmondson ALFA, third from the left.
10 seconds to go.
10 seconds to go. This will be an electrifying start. The acceleration of these cars will be awesome.
There they go. Car stall on the grid, says the sign. Must be back a bit.
Brock badly away, Jones well away, Edmondson punching, Jones into the lead, Colin Bond being rounded up by French, Edmondson going with Jones, Brock in third, now second, and it's Jones, Edmondson, Jones, Brock, Edmondson, Bond, Rusty French, Peter Fitzgerald, Jones going so wide in the, oh, you see how long it took him to bring the car back there, the S's. Bond, Rusty French back there, Clem Smith. Onto the reverse camber. This is the area where Brock has an advantage. Watch the advantage. Watch it in this loop where Jones has tried all sorts of lines. And the big V8 will just grunt its way out of this corner. The Porsche has to wait, get lined up, get on to boost. Let's see what the world champion of 1980 can do, though. And Brock's going to have to go the long way round if he wants him. And he's sitting back and waiting.
In practice yesterday, Alan Jones about a tenth of a second faster down this main straight. Almost nothing in it, but Jones just a little bit faster.
Look at the flame out of the turbo exhaust. Savour this moment. You're watching two magnificent drivers in two highly disparate motor cars really wring the neck of those cars, get every little ounce out of them.
This is what Alan Jones has been looking for. He's dominated the first 3 rounds of the Australian Sports Sedan and GT Championship. He wants competition because he is a competitor. Brock nosing up. Just look how much faster that Monza is through this banking. Yesterday in practice, up to a second the Monza had through the banking. He's nosing to the inside. Now the drag race down the straight.
And has he got the grunt? The Porsche's on the boost now and is holding him. Up towards 300 kilometres an hour. Hard on the brakes. Look at the Porsche weave, and Brock's under him. Well, there's the advantage in braking from the Monza. A better balanced car, as Jones said, in something of an understatement, as you saw that. Gets a bit weedy under brakes, and did it ever. It took a good man to hold it straight and to keep going in the corner there. And look at Brock sail away now.
And watch Brock now up on the banking especially, because this is where the big V8 really fires.
There's tenths of seconds in every little stretch of track here for Peter Brock. Look at it. Watch it here. You won't see it so much as they come head on. But even there, he's still pulling it. See the different lines. See Jones keeping tight because the car washes away so much when it gets light at the front. Further back, Tony Edmondson still holding Bond. A 52.71 for Peter Brock. So he's taken 1.29 seconds off the lap record straight away. 25 laps this.
Brock's car benefiting from the work from Harvey Spencer, a chassis designer who worked for Williams, Alan Jones's old team, Formula One team, and also for McLaren. And there's been a lot of suspension work that's gone into this Monza as it's been converted from sports sedan status to GT category, and it's really showing here in the handling department.
Just turned into that reverse camber so beautifully. Just a brake, some braking, and that to point it, and then he just pulls it into the corner and it just turns in absolutely gloriously, where Jones has to be much more cautious. Brock half a second more off the lap record of 52.26 by our timing. But look at this, a 24-hour race car spitting fire and fury and flame out the back. And the motor rebuilt on the Alan Hamilton Porsche. But look at this dice further back. That was at the beginning of the season. They hope it'll go the whole season without a rebuild. And this dice further back, Clem Smith in the Charger there. Clem Smith running in 7th place in car number 26. Heading car 2, Mick Monterosso. Car 43 is John Lusty. And car number 6, David Terrell.
And amongst all of it, car 22, Luigi De Luca in the little Anglia, who's really firing it up. That white car, the Escort, is the lap record holder in the 2-litre class. His lap record is 58.9, about 4.9, almost 5 seconds off the pace of the outright cars. But just look at Clem Smith holding him up through the S's and onto the bowl now.
Clem Smith, the man that's been behind the rejuvenation of Malalar circuit here in Adelaide, had their first race meeting there last weekend, and if Brock and Jones are busy up front at lower speeds, these boys are having an absolute ball. Tremendous argument. I don't know if I'd like to be in a poker school with them. Peter Brock now running away a little bit from Jones. His lead over Jones as they've cut through 2 of the tail enders is 2.78 seconds.
That's the leaders. Peter Brock, Alan Jones.
They're the 2 cars they've lapped. Brock's car, you can just see how he can be braking still and turn it at a much greater speed into the corners. But now he has to cope with traffic, and later in the race, will he have to cope with tyre problems? that group that we were following. You saw how close it was.
There goes
and
DeLuca.
then you saw DeLuca.
In the Anglia, all sideways, backwards, keeping it on the dirt.
And the flag marshal, unperturbed, waving the caution flag as DeLuca overcorrects. And by luck, manages to miss the barrier. As we see Graham Lusty, he's about to be overtaken very shortly by Brock.
Official lap record on Brock, 52.5 seconds, 1.5 seconds off the lap record, held by Bob Jane in this same car, although in a different guise. This is in GT formation, which means that the car is allowed far more body and suspension modifications and far wider wheels. It can have up to 18-inch wide wheels, whereas sports sedans are allowed only 10-inch wheels, and that's what Tony Edmondson in the Alpha Chevrolet is on, only 10-inch wheels, so he's at an immense disadvantage in getting his power to the ground compared to these cars.
Peter Brock, the only chap that's ever driven this car other than Bob Jane. Bob Jane with sciatica from an old back injury ages ago, and just not 100%. Behind Brock there, first place, Jones still holding second and running to about 3 seconds in arrears is Tony Edmondson.
And then 1.4 seconds behind Tony Edmondson is Colin Bond, trying incredibly hard to catch up. They lap the back markers. That was the dice we were watching earlier, already lapped by Peter Brock on only lap 8 for a 25 lap event.
Peter Brock was just so thrilled when he first drove this car. It took him only 4 laps of private practice on last Thursday or Friday, as we look at Peter Fitzgerald's car 3, the RSR 3.2-litre non-turbo Porsche, which qualified 6th fastest for the 58.3. He was one of the people actually trying to raise the $40,000 to do a lease deal on the car that Rusty French is running now for Corgi Racing.
And instead he finds himself $12,000 behind the 8 ball, having recently repaired the blown-up motor of his Porsche, and has to pay back $5,000 of that by the end of this month. If he doesn't, he says he forfeits the motor car.
That's the sight, the flame out of the exhaust there. The car's got 4 exhaust pipes, 2 major large pipes. Look at the nose up as Jones gives it everything. It's getting about 700 horsepower on the song. And then it drops as he stands on the brakes. But there's 2 major pipes that take the exhaust away, and then 2 from the wastegate, which opens when the exhaust turbo pressure exceeds 1.4 atmospheres. And you get some fuel build-up in there, and at night, watching them run at Le Mans, you get that flame as they back off to the corners, and the whole turbo glowing red in these cars. It's a brilliant motor car. It came with water-cooled brakes to keep them cool over the intense high speeds of the Le Mans circuit and running for such long periods. And then added to that, when they pull into the pits at night and stop, the brakes are so hot they then have fans that they switch on to keep the pads and the isolated. Look at the nose up in the air again. Fascinating to watch the attitude of this car. Look how busy Jones is. A great driver. Won the World Championship in 80, dominated it in 79, had a lot of mechanical problems and so on in 81, but really, in a driving sense, close to dominated it again. And people really have been crying for his services back in the European scene. He doesn't take this beating by Peter Brock, as it is at the moment, as any reflection on driving ability, because the cars are just so different, such different strengths and weaknesses. There's Tony Edmondson's Alfetta that's running 3rd, and his dice with Jones' teammate Bond will be another fascinating part of the race. You see there, Edmondson's managed to separate himself from 2 cars, bringing the neck of that thing fairly well too. Getting it pretty sideways.
Edmondson now 2 seconds in front of Colin Bond, but you can see Bond behind him now. So Edmondson lives that wheel through the S's. That's Bond right behind.
That's the gap. There's Bond turning in beautifully in 4th place. This is a 944 Porsche. 924, many of you have no doubt seen on the roads, the front engine car. The 4.4 uses a new Porsche-developed motor, which is a 2.5-litre four-cylinder, and with some slightly improved aerodynamics and wider wheels and so on, more flared in the rear guards. But this version is turbocharged and is pushing out over 500 horsepower. It's a pretty lively little car and a beautifully balanced car. Even the standard 944 will pull 180 kilometres now, rolling along at running-in speeds at about 4,500 revs, and is capable at maximum of about 220 kilometres an hour. Colin says the problem with this car, and as I say, we tend to relate it to the Audi or Volkswagen engine 2-litre four-cylinder 924, which is far from being the most exciting Porsche ever. But
meantime, in the lead, there it is. There's Brock with Jones catching again. Jones has come down from 2.42 seconds the gap down to 1.7 seconds in just one lap. Could it be that Peter Brock's tyres are going off? Could it be that Alan Jones has found more horsepower in that car? He can only screw up the twin turbochargers for a very short amount of time at any point of time, or the whole thing is in danger of expiring. But certainly Alan Jones is catching.
Could it be that Jones is doing what he's done so often in Formula One, and that is letting the car settle, looking after the tyres and brakes, watching what his opposition can do, and then having another attack later in the race? Because one of his great attributes, and he's got many running for him, because he's very quick, he's a great sorter of motor cars, but he's a great thinker, he's a great race strategist. And as he came onto the straight there were a few bangs and fluffs from the back of the car as unburnt fuel came ignited in the exhaust system. But look at Jones re-attacking Brock, and Brock, I think, has got troubles.
This is what we've all waited for, though. Ever since Alan Jones came back to Australia at the end of last year, we wanted to see Alan Jones not just driving fast, but driving in spirited competition, because that's where he's really good. Probably the most aggressive and race-wise driver in the world today, and that's what we're watching right now.
14 laps completed. You've got 11 laps of brilliance, I think, in terms of the motor cars we're watching and the ability of the two drivers in them.
Rusty French in the Corgi Porsche just lapped. That's the difference between these two drivers and everyone else in the race. Brock Jones now right in his draft down the main straight. Slower car in the way. Look at that!
I just wondered if he'd go down that side, and
wait for
a good manoeuvre. He's in the lead. Jones back in the lead again. This is great driving and great racing. And this is what a race driver's all about, because before the race he was saying 1.6 seconds, what can I do about it? If it was half a second, I could try driving 10/10. But look at the nose up in the air. And the adrenaline in this man is really pumping. And all the competitive urge that took him to a world championship in 1980 is right to the fore now. And he's got a bit of machinery there that in certain areas is brilliant, in others is not so good. It's a great car, but he is making up for the deficiencies and living with the strengths in grand style. Look at the thing flying off, and that's not just Jones steering the thing to the outside of the track. When he guns it, when it goes up at the nose, it goes light, and it just sweeps sideways at the front. The way Brock has fallen back, one wonders whether he's had a problem. We'll have a look at the lap times that they're doing. With 16 completed now, the race order. Jones from Brock, from Edmondson still in 1, leading Bond in 28. 1 lap back to car number 10 is Rusty French in the Corgi black Porsche. And behind him, Clem Smith in the Charger, that dice that we saw earlier with, on his tail, David Ferrell. And it's a lap further back then to Mick Monterosso. So how's this going to resolve itself? Brock seems unable to stay with it. Yes, the way that gap's going now, one must assume he's got a problem. 2.1 seconds, the gap.
Jones, a different sort of man in the pits than just about anyone we're used to in Australian motor racing, with the possible exception of Alan Moffat, a difficult man to talk to on race day. Total concentration on the job ahead. we're used to our Australian motor racing drivers enjoying their sport. Even people like Peter Brock, most approachable. Jones, a very, very difficult person, but a man who, when he gets in the motor car, just makes it all happen.
Jones is enjoying his motorsport, though. He's absolutely loving it. He's doing it because he wants to do it, and because he enjoys it, he's lining himself up for a 1,000-kilometre Cairns to Southport powerboat race later in the year, the Pacific 1000, and committing some more than $100,000 of his own money to building a touring car, which is making its track debut next week, the Falcon XE. So he's perhaps more intense, might be the more accurate description, and more wound up as he laps Clem Smith.
Double laps Clem Smith, in fact, in just 18 laps of a 25-lap race.
And when you think that Clem Smith is in 6th place, some comment on the speed of that car.
Brock now in 2nd place, coming up to challenge Clem Smith as well. That's no challenge.
But doing it very slowly. And there's the story, to some extent, I think, of Jones' lead. As Edmonton goes over the start-finish line in 3rd place. And that is that something's gone awry with the 6-litre Chevy Monza. And Brock's pace has dropped. A lap time in a moment on Jones. You can see there the car not doing anything nearly as fast as it was a little while ago, and the gap now is 5 seconds between 1st and 2nd. 5 laps to go. Sorry, not seconds. The lap time for Jones, 53.79.
And look at Brock working inside that motor car coming off the bowl. Could it be tyres, in fact? Because he had a lot of steering effort on the motor car there, trying to keep attitude off the motor car.
The gap is
attitude off the car.
The gap is 5.7 seconds, and in fact that just might be the answer to the problem that Jones was saying. We're going to have to rely on him cooking tyres or some other problem, and perhaps in his shrewd way that was what he let Peter Brock do, although one of the most unlikely men to be hard on his tyres or in any way to not to be sympathetic with the motor car would be Peter Brock. Beautifully built car, some glorious work around the windscreen. Down the A pillar there's a separate pillar runs forward with the windscreen wrapping around behind it. And they've had an aircraft aerodynamicist working on it. As John Smales was saying earlier, a Formula One suspension and chassis engineer, Pat Purcell, to whom the most enormous amount of credit is due for the whole concept of the motor car and the way that it's been done. It is really a brilliant motor car. It's a lower car at roof height than the Porsche.
18 seconds back to Tony Edmondson in 3rd position behind Peter Brock, and another 6 seconds behind Edmondson back to Colin Bond in the 2nd Porsche.
It's a slow Peter Brock there. And so with 3 laps and a little bit to go, Peter Brock not travelling so slowly that somebody else could be a threat to him, but he's losing substantial amounts of ground to Jones, the race leader, car number 27. He led for the first 2 laps over, taken by Brock under brakes at the end of the straight on the 3rd lap, retook the lead on the 18th lap and has held it since then, having completed 22. There's a lot of so many trim tabs on that car. It's a part of the car that Jones enjoys, is that it's so responsive to tuning and to changes that they make to it. There's trim tabs come out the side, in front of the front wheels and around the rear wheels. There's nose tabs, the wing angle at the rear, roll bars, of course, caster angles. Peter Brock, in fact, was doing adjustment to his car too, not so much in roll bars and so on, but he's in rear wing and caster of the front wheels. He said the steering was very heavy when he first drove it. 2 laps to go for Jones. Farmer, car collector, millionaire, I suppose. Highly successful race driver, 33 years old, and likely sometime in the near future to be back with Frank Williams in an FW08 to at least talk to him and to perhaps help in sorting out the team cars, because Williams said in a conversation with Jones last Thursday that he's not getting enough feedback from his drivers, Keke Rosberg and Derek Daly, on what the cars are doing. In Jones' word, he says if Rosberg's happy if the car's on pole and unhappy if it's not, but doesn't really know what he would like it to be doing or what to do about it. Whereas this man's got a great feel for a car. Very relaxed and thinking while he's at the wheel as he cruises now on his last lap to what certainly was not shaping to be victory and certainly wasn't shaping to be an easy one in this fourth round of the Australian Sports Sedan Championship. But that's the way it will run, with Jones running to 36 points. Peter Brock hasn't started in any of the other rounds in the series, so he will take 6. But that will leave him behind Rusty French lying second on 14 without today's score. Colin Bond lying third on 10. Tony Edmondson fourth on 6, equal with Tony Hubbard. And Bruce Linton behind him, 6th place on 4 points. And here goes Jones off that banking to which the car is so unsuited.
Peter Brock
for the final time
behind,
and then Brock quite a few seconds in arrears now. I'd say around 10 seconds, and there it is. It's 12.95. So quite a substantial gap as we look at third place. Edmondson, one finishes now.
And about 7 seconds behind him, we'll see Colin Bond coming around. Sliding sideways is Colin Bond. And through goes Bond in fourth position.
Then Rusty French in a 935, the Corgi racing car that didn't sound too healthy and was 1 lap down. 24 laps completed. It's a further lap down to Clem Smith. 26 in 6th place. Followed home by number 2, Mick Monterosso. 44, Graham Lusty, and 22, Luigi De Luca. They were the finishers. There are the results.
And there are the place getters. Alan Jones winning his 4th successive Australian GT Championship victory from Peter Brock this time in the Chevy Monza, and Tony Edmondson in the Alfa Romeo Chevrolet. And in the Australian GT and Sports Sedan Championships combined this year, the points now are Alan Jones, a perfect 36 points for 4 wins, from Rusty French on 16 points, Colin Bond on 13, Tony Edmondson, the defending champion, on 10, and Peter Brock with only 1 round covered on 6 points. Alan Jones gets out of the Porsche, looking forward to going to Wanneroo in Western Australia next weekend for the next round of the Australian Sports Sedan Championships. Alan Hamilton, his team patron, with him there on the right.
And the German chief mechanic in behind. He looks after that car like it was his own baby. And let's hear from Malcolm McDonald.
Congratulations all round. Congratulations, Alan. We're right on national television right now. Great drive. How did it all go to plan?
Well, the car just performed perfectly as usual. And although Brocky had more brute horsepower and torque, we were going to rely on good old German reliability.
Right. And what about the early part when Peter got that break over there? Were you concerned with the situation?
Well, I got a bit sideways coming out of the sweeper there and was unable to put my foot on the power as quick as I'd like it, and he got a bit of a run at me and got on the inside of me under brakes to the right hand at the end of the straight.
You unleashed some awesome power, though, after that.
Yeah, well, to be honest, it was all I could do was stay with him, and I think his tyres must have gone off or something, and he wasn't quite as quick through the corners as what he was earlier, and I just was able to haul him in and get past him.
Well, this gives you a tremendous lead in the situation now with 36 points after 4 wins straight.
Yeah, well, I can't complain about the record.
Indeed. Congratulations again, Alan Jones.
Thank you.
Winner of the big event here this afternoon, and George Priestley, the manager for Toyota in South Australia, is about to make the presentation.
Congratulations, Alan. Great drive. On behalf of the Toyota dealers of South Australia, I'm sure the public of South Australia saw something they've been waiting many, many years to see.
Oh, thank you very much. On behalf of myself and Stan Hansen of Saab Cars Australia, I'd like to say thank you very much.
Okay, there it is, and now we go back to our central commentary position.
Part of the big crowd here at Adelaide International Raceway, who have come to see not only, of course, the showdown between Peter Brock and Alan Jones, but also to see great racing in the Australian National Formula One Championship. The championship drawing quite large crowds throughout Australia wherever it goes, because the Little Rolt, RT4s, the Tigers and the Tolmans are really gathering a following in Australian motor racing.
I suspect, to go back, John, to the sports sedan race there, that would have been a most valuable 20-odd minutes in Peter Brock's race career, because I think he would have learnt a good deal from Alan Jones there, and perhaps have been surprised at the way, making the assumption that it was his tyres that went off, at the way they did so. Jones put in a lot of practice yesterday, 15-odd laps in the Porsche, and changed tyre brands today. He did his qualifying time on Dunlops, went to Goodyear's today, but Brock did only 3 quick laps yesterday, and the Porsche 935 really is a fascinating motor car. It's a factory-built car. This is a 1978 model, subsequently made by the Kramer Company in England, and let's hear how it works. Alan Hamilton to drive the Porsche 944. How did you feel when he offered you the 935 with another 200 to 300 horsepower?
Well, first and foremost, I must say it hasn't got another 200 or 300 horsepower, Will.
Well, how much has it got?
I wish it did. I would probably say another 150 odd brake horsepower, more than the 944. But the thing about the car is that it's a fully proven motor car. It's been through years of development, and this is what we went for. We went for a car that would be truly proven and have a lot of reliability on its side, so we could mount these points.
But a heavy car?
Yeah, unfortunately it's 120 kilos overweight, because, as I said before, the car has been designed and raced in 24-hour races or 12-hour races, so it has very large fuel tanks and super big wide disc brakes and all the rest of it. But I think that if we were going to race it next year here, we'd bring it down to the Australian weight limit, and that'd take about 120 kilograms off it.
Unlike Formula One cars, which a lot of people see as being rear-engine, this is, they're really mid-engine, and this is rear-engine with the engine out the back, and that doesn't give it terrific handling. How do you find it to drive? What are its vices and its virtues?
Well, it has plenty of both. It's sort of like the old thing, what do you prefer, understeer or oversteer? And when you say, well, it doesn't matter because it's got both. It's a very good car for what it is. It's a difficult car to drive because it has tremendous weight transfer. When you accelerate, the nose lifts very high in the air, and when you brake, the nose dips very low in the air. So it has the characteristics of the car change considerably with the power.
One of the things it's most noted for, of course, is the twin turbo and your ability to adjust the boost. What boost are you running on at the moment?
Well, we haven't changed it. We run on 1.4, and that's, you know, I haven't really been higher than 1.4, to be honest.
But you've got a little gauge and a little switch, which in a situation like today, you could reach for and get more power out of it.
Yes, I could. We have a gauge here that runs a series of lights, and they go green, yellow, red, and unfortunately, when it goes onto the reds stay on, so the boss knows I've been up there. But we normally keep it about 1.4, and the red comes on at 1.6.
Alan, you were telling me last week that you've had very recently a phone call from Frank Williams to go and at least do some track testing for him in the FW08 Formula One car. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm probably going to Europe in the next couple of weeks anyway, so I might take the opportunity to just nick over and do a couple of days testing.